Max, hi. So we've been working together and talking to folks today about really a lot of topics, but particularly around reinventing organizations and the whole future of work kind of topic. So how do you feel? What's your impression of how it's gone?
There's a lot of talk about Agile. I think I've heard Agile in about every other presentation, and I loved your take on it. I loved your take on that Agile gets bad PR. So it'd be really super to hear your views on Agile, because I think it's something that everyone needs help with, because it means everything and nothing. And one thing that resonated for me, the talk I just gave, was the response afterwards from people. So it was the human side of the story. And people came to me afterwards and said, hearing human stories kind of made a difference to how they think about this stuff.
I certainly have been very struck this conference about, it's been a couple of years now where things like topics and concepts like future of work and Agile, and it's been going on now, and you just get a sense that things have moved on, and people are getting more real about these topics now, and there's more evidence, more stories, more discussion on, well, what people actually done in this space. And I think that's refreshing. And certainly you mentioned, Agile, certainly you get a glazed look over people's, because people's eyes when you deal with it. But the point is, we do need to kind of get to grips with it. So that's one thing I'm struck with is that we've kind of moved on beyond these concepts and got into the reality of it. But the second thing is exactly what you're saying, is bringing it to the individual's level. The sort of, I suppose, the plight of the individual. How people in this kind of changing world of work are going to thrive in that change, rather than just cope and survive. I think that's what came across in your work, particularly in terms of taking a really hard look at the motivation of people at work and really kind of working out what those tests might be. Do you want to share with us maybe a couple of the ideas coming from your work with helping people cope with the stresses and strains of the world of work?
Yeah, so in my experience as Chief Joy Officer, I've really worked out what I call the 4 keys to unleashing that motivation at work for individual human beings. And the 4 keys are around the fact that I belong, so that I feel this sense of belonging to the tribe. The other is that I am seen, so that I am recognized, appreciated as an individual within that tribe. The third thing is this sense of autonomy. I call it "it's my thing," so that people really have that sense of ownership, and that drives motivation, right? You want to make it better. And the final thing is I am growing. So that's about our own need to grow and develop and push ourselves forwards. So I call this the roots and fruits. And if a company can focus on creating an environment where those 4 things are possible, then it speaks to basic human psychological needs. And in doing so, it allows people to look forward to going to work on a Monday morning, right? If they are appreciated as part of a tribe, community doing stuff, if they can drive their thing forwards and grow, then that makes everything possible. And hopefully takes away a lot of the negativity around, I've got to go back to work now. And one word that struck me as I heard a couple of things today was the word care. First of all, we want people that care about what they do. That's the autonomy. That I really care about this place and I care that we do well. On the other side is that, do we care about our people? So do you show that human side, right? That human connection, that human trust, that how are you doing? And to really care about human beings. Because with all this talk of technology and Agile and future of work, we forget that businesses are people. No more, no less. And by focusing a little bit more time on that human side, it makes a huge difference.
That point about care came up as well with the sort of multiplicity of teams, that if you're a member on so many teams and you're being stretched from point A to point B and you've been maximized in terms of your time, then where do you get a chance to sort of settle and care, and actually put some time and thought into what you're doing at a sort of more big picture level? I found there was quite a lot of overlap with what you and I were talking about around this whole idea of the individual's kind of capabilities, the qualities that you kind of need to survive and thrive and to enjoy the changing world of work. And we were sharing our thoughts on what we've talked about being a personal agility model, because again, this word of agility, you talk about it at a team level and organizational level, but nobody ever talks about what does it look like at individual level. And we started to share some things around that, about learning mindset and being able to change orientation. But purpose, actually, and being driven by something that's important to you is actually a really important enabler of agility and resilience, and being able to connect in that, whether that's your own driving force or whether it's the mission and vision of the organization. But tapping into those qualities and skills of agility seem to be something also that's more important now for HR as well, to be able to select people with those kind of qualities as well, and for individuals to understand what they are, so that they can not only cope with the day-to-day work but also build a career for the future as well, knowing what those kind of skills are. So there seems to be a nice kind of resonance. There seems to be quite a lot of common denominators coming through from whatever perspectives people are coming from.
Of course, there were so many wonderful messages in your talk about agile and what it really is and what it really isn't. We haven't got long now, so what would if there's one thing you wish people would understand about what this whole agile thing really is, what would your one nugget be?
I think it's a recognition that it's kind of a multi-process. It's a bit like the skiing analogy that I had, that, as well as kind of navigating the current kind of week and the current kind of issues and challenges that you have today, we all need to be able to sort of lift our head above the parapet sometimes and understand where are we going, so we don't go over the cliff or whatever. So it's that idea of being able to sense and respond. But to do that, I keep coming back, as well as that orientation to learning, that openness, if you like, to learning, that learning mindset idea, being driven by people who kind of an understanding of your own kind of purpose, what you're at, what you want out of this situation, what you want out of this organization or out of this role. Because if I know what I'm about, then I'm more willing to take on maybe multiple projects or work with multiple teams. I might also be more inclined to say no. And actually, no, I don't want to do that. That's too much. So just be more aware about what it is you're about and what you want. Because otherwise you end up just reacting and kind of being bounced around, and probably to a point where it gets unhealthy. Because I think some of the things we have in this kind of interconnected world as well is always on, always available, always, there's this fast pace of work that we're dealing with. We've got to have a kind of a central navigation system there, just to kind of make sure we don't go overboard or we don't burn out, etc.
Yeah. There's a phrase that I really like, which is being on purpose.
Yeah.
So, meaning being obviously on your purpose.
Yeah.
Like, what is your purpose? Yeah. And it makes you therefore do things more on purpose.
Yeah.
Intentional.
It's good. It's really good. More intentional, more mindful, more deliberate, more conscious rather than reactive.
Correct. You can make the better choices. And I particularly liked the skiing analogy that you used about a skier has to constantly be aware of what he's doing right now, because there might be a stone or a thing that he has to avoid, but equally he's got to know where he's going. What I really liked about that, as you said, a skier is very disciplined, right? It's not just chaos. It's not like, well, just be agile and just do whatever, but that deliberate discipline of, they have to be disciplined, trained, toned, practiced, skilled, to be able to do both, to be able to look what's happening right now and be able to make sure they're still not going to hit a tree.
It kind of works, just to break down what is kind of a tricky concept sometimes, and I think that's one of the reasons it gets such a bad press, is that it's kind of a tricky subject to get your head around, and it means different things to different people. But I think particularly in HR, and that's one of the good things I'm finding about this conference, is it doesn't shy away from asking the difficult questions and saying just because we don't like the sound of something, we're going to avoid it. No, actually, we have to get to the bottom of it and try and help people through that. So.
Another thing I liked that you said was, you asked people to hold their hands up if they were getting annoyed with the phrase future of work. A number of hands went up, including mine, I have to say. Why do you think people are getting annoyed with the phrase future of work, or tired of it?
I wonder, is it this case of this information overload as well? You just seems that like every day or every week you just get a blizzard of new reports and new information and new data, all very interesting stuff. Talking about the robots are coming, automation, the jobs are not going to exist, etc. So part of it is just information overload. And part of it is just the need to move on and say, okay, well, we know all that stuff is happening. We know it's true, and we know there's these different forces like different generations at work and globalization and technology. But the trick is really, well, so what? What difference? What do I need to do differently to prepare for that? That's where I think the debate needs to move on to, rather than talking about a concept that, at the end of the day, future of work, there isn't even a definition of it. It's just a label of convenience for lots of stuff that people throw in there, from robots to AI, etc. So I just think there's a sort of a mood now to move on with the debate and the discussion and say, okay, I get it, but what do I need to do to prepare for it and to help my organization or help individuals through it? And I think that's where the fun is now as well. And that's where...
Well, the reason I held up my hand for being tired of the word future of work is because it gives people permission to say, that's in the future. It's not happening now, that's happening in the future. And like you say, let's just do some stuff now. And if we're going to talk agile, just try stuff out, right? I loved your phrase, what was it? Think big, start small. Just think big, be consistent, but just try stuff out, give it a go. And we can do that in the HR world, in the business world. So yeah, instead of talking about the future's going to be grim or great or whatever, let's start today.
I think there is something in that. I mean, we talked about it being first and foremost a mindset, because I think we have come maybe from the old world sort of plan and control kind of world, where we're used to kind of planning and shaping things to 100% before we let them go or launch them. Whereas now things are moving so fast that by the time we do that, then maybe the goalposts have changed or the outcome that we were designing for has changed. So actually we've no choice but to move on. And I think part of the trickiness of this sort of way of working is being comfortable with sort of letting go, experimentation, everything not being 100% cooked before it's going out. And that's part of the mindset shift, I think, that we all kind of are struggling with, because we like certainty as human beings. We like certainty. We like things to be clear.
And I'm going to challenge you.
Great.
So yes, I understand, and I mostly agree with you. But I have to reflect on. So I do lessons from Sam, LinkedIn.
Oh yes.
Storylines. This is all about my 5-year-old boy and what he's taught me. And I think business.
Out of the mouth of babes comes great truth. Yeah.
Right, and his actions and. You talk about we like certainty, we don't like experimenting, trying things out, not knowing how it's going to turn out. That's all he does. He has no idea how it's going to end up. He kind of raids our kitchen, takes any food stuff he can and just chucks it all in a box and says, I'm experimenting.
That's how he's learned, right? That's how he learns.
He's learned. And
we lose that, don't we? We lose that.
So that's my challenge to you, is that you say we like certainty. I think we've learnt to like certainty, but I think in our very essence as beings, experimenting, trying, learning, not knowing where it's going to end up, that's in us.
Doesn't that come from, though, the huge area now, which is psychological safety? So in an organizational context and traditional sort of command and control leadership type models, that sense of playfulness or experimentation is something seen as a risk, time inefficient, and not the way things are done. So my point would be that through the kind of whole hierarchical plan and control way of work, we've got used to that sort of way, but now we can't. We've got to get back to Sam's world really to grow, because things are moving so fast. So I'd say keep up those discussions with Sam, because that's fantastic and it's true. But it is just a difficulty in transition, where I think the old command and control kind of way of looking at things. But to come back to that psychological safety point, that is one of the biggest things you hear in those organizations that have successfully moved into more experimentation and agile work, where leadership have allowed failure to exist without repercussion, without consequences. And people feel safe to put their hand up and say, that's it. Can I not try it this way? Ask the silly question. So Sam's lucky because he's in an environment where this playfulness has been encouraged and recognized and rewarded, whereas unfortunately maybe not all organizations are yet in that space.
True. Psychological safety is a big thing that I work with. So when I work with leadership teams or indeed any teams, I use Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team
really good.
and the pyramid. And nothing else is truly possible. No conflict, no commitment, no accountability, no team results, unless the team builds a base of vulnerability-based trust. And that's about that psychological safety, that we realize we're all just human beings. We take away the facades and the suits and the masks and we go, we're actually just human beings who all have different skills, fears, failures, successes. Once we take all that away, only then is a team and therefore an organization able to truly go up the pyramid and start to create stuff and really have great team results. And that psychological safety is around the humanness.
And the trust.
And the trust.
Yeah, I totally agree. Without that, you're not going to get that. Sam's not going to be comfortable in, trying something new if he doesn't trust that it's going to be okay. So I totally agree with you. I love that model too, because I think it speaks to the dysfunction of teams rather than trying to say, here's the perfect model of teams. Actually, no, here's how teams are messy and here's how they fail, and it gets to the heart of it, which is relationships and trust. So totally agree. Thank you. It's been really, really great just to reflect on some of the conversations that have been going on, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, Richard.